Hello, welcome to Tuesday Talks. Got a few people joining already. I'm going to go ahead and wave at you. We got Jackie Lou, we got G. Costaleo, we got a number of people joining. Hi, Jackie. We have an exciting special guest today, Jeffrey Roseman, Vice Chairman of Newmark Knight Frank Retail. And I actually was just in Vegas at ICSC Recon, the largest convention of real estate professionals that I am going. Jeff just joined. Hi, Jeff, saying hi to him. So we are going to have, Jeff is going to request to be a co-host, and he'll be joining us soon. But we were just at ICSC, very exciting time of real estate professionals coming together, thinking through what's happening in retail real estate, what are the trends, what's the innovations we should be looking at, what's going to happen going forward, how do we navigate those waters. So we have some exciting questions that have already come in, and as soon as Jeff joins, splits the screen with me, we're going to start asking some of those questions. But just there we go, we're going to add him in. Yes, there we go. Okay, he is slowly going to be joining us. Doesn't mean you can't ask them live. We want to hear live, so feel free to chime in and interject into the conversation and ask any questions you may have. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Melissa, how are you? Sorry about that.
Good. All right, your lighting looks good. We are ready to rock. So
awesome.
Everybody, this is Jeffrey Roseman. He is Vice Chairman at Newmark Knight Frank Retail, and as I mentioned, we actually just had an exciting time at ICSC, and there's a lot of exciting things happening in the retail real estate space, which we'll get to some of those top trends. But I'm going to go ahead and start with some of the questions that were already present to us, because there are some burning questions, Jeffrey, from brands that are looking to figure out how to really navigate the waters in real estate in today's day and age. So, what we're gonna start with one that came in. What are the pain points that you see commonly expressed by your clients, both on the brand and on the landlord side, and how do you think that you can solve them?
So on the landlord side, I mean, obviously there's a decent amount of available space in the city. I think that as retailers and brands have gotten more sophisticated, the deal-making process takes a lot longer than it should. And it's definitely a frustrating, the sense of urgency, getting retailers to sort of move forward quickly and do their due diligence in a quicker manner. So that's always very frustrating for owners. On the other side, I think, the barrier to entry in New York, the costs are sometimes very sort of offsetting to retailers and brands when they get their arms around construction and labor and insurance and everything, and it usually justifies at the end, because virtually every big retailer who opens a store in New York becomes their highest grossing store and probably their most profitable. So it's definitely sticker shock for some when they come into New York.
Yeah, I think that goes towards one of the questions that actually came in is, besides rent and we help a lot of our clients with design and sourcing, but what are those other costs that they have to take into consideration, especially in the New York market, that tend to be surprising?
Operating expenses, and, whether it's utilities or whether it's, the specific building you're in, operating expenses can run high. Security tends to, if it's going to be a fairly highly trafficked retailer, then security becomes an issue, and building ownership is going to want to make sure that people sort of are not lingering outside and doing anything that they shouldn't be doing. So those costs can definitely add up on top of just traditional construction, and whether you have to use union labor or so.
Yeah, that definitely comes up, and we kind of walk the line because a lot of our clients do pop up. But it's interesting when you mention the decision process, because it's kind of like flips the script a little bit on the decision side. I feel like on pop-ups, brands want to move fast,
Right.
and it's the landlords that take a longer time to make the decision. And then for the long-term lease, it's the opposite. So it's like, how do you get the two to come together, I guess,
Well,
and
yeah.
balance that out?
And it's funny because pop-ups are, I think pop-ups are saying to a landlord, hey, you're not going to rent your space for the next few months, so let us go in. So I think, there's always sort of that conflicted feeling on a landlord's part, like, gee, if I do this, am I going to be off the market for a few months? So, they tend to sort of go in a little bit slower, than they may have traditionally.
Yeah, so that always brings us to the question before, because I always like to see what people write. And Steve Morrow said that you look great, Jeff. So I don't know if you saw that comment.
Thanks, Steve.
He appreciates your compliment. But so yeah, that goes along. How does a brand best position themselves for a landlord to say yes, you can do a pop-up in the space? Like, what are they really looking for to feel comfortable?
So look, I'm a huge fan of pop-ups because how many years ago that they didn't even exist, right? We'd sit with empty space. The only short-term tenants we'd get are either a Christmas tree or a Halloween store, and definitely not that sort of compelling or appealing. Now you've seen everyone from LVMH to Michelin star restaurants that are opening these pop-ups, and I always sort of encourage my landlord clients. It's a great use of space. Obviously, there's a few bucks involved, but it's gonna generate the block. It's gonna show the space in its best light, especially if it's a bigger company that's looking to make some sort of statement. They're gonna spend a decent amount of money in there and really do it upright. So it brings life to a dark store. And many times it can lead to a long-term deal, either the tenant who's occupying it now, or somebody's going to come along and see it and say, wow, that's a beautiful store. I didn't realize, how good it looks.
Yeah, we've definitely been able to partner with you in some of those examples. And
well,
I know we did that back in the day with Food 52 with the old Starbucks space.
Right, we did it. That was a great pop-up. The space was sort of dark and dreary. It was a great corner, but it didn't show great. And we had a great pop-up in there for at least a month, maybe 2 months. And we were able to bring a lot of prospective retailers through there during that time. They got to see it in its best light. And we eventually leased the store. And I think everybody sort of made out. And the tenant who was in there for the short time, I think, seriously considered staying long term.
Yeah, I think if the timing was different, they would have loved to stay. So we actually have a live question that came in from Josh saying, what kind of percentage end up leasing long term from pop-ups in your experience?
That's a great question.
And do you see that shifting?
It's a great question. I think it's a smaller percentage, but what I think it does do is that retailer tends to lease somewhere. Many times it's a brand sort of experimenting with something and they're in the early stages. So they'll do a pop-up, and while they're not ready to sort of just move into a full-term store, probably 6 months to a year, they will do a store. I think that the real do a pop-up, and then about a year later.
Yeah, exactly. A block away from.
Yeah. So I think sometimes it takes a company to get their sort of, their act together, and then they say, wow, this really does work. And then they hone it a little bit more, and then they go to market.
So, so I guess, are there any important areas? And I guess it goes two ways. Like, how does a lease negotiation for a short-term rental kind of differ from the long-term? Like, are there some important points that should be considered differently?
Look, I think the key for a landlord in a short-term deal is, to make sure that the tenant gets out on time, and doesn't sort of interfere with perhaps a negotiation that's happening. So that's always something that's very important. And for a retailer, I think you just want to make sure that there's no sort of real serious defects in the space that you're inheriting, for your short-term store.
Yeah, in our experience, we always kind of work that into the budget when a client asks for some production preliminary estimates. We always have a little bit of a contingency budget because you're not going to white box a space for short term as you would do for long term. So we always want to make sure we have, and I'm just going ahead and waving quickly hi to all the new people that are joining in. Mark, and I know I make you smile, and Christian, I think. So thanks for joining us. But yeah, we always, painting, electrician, like you don't know if all the outlets are going to work. So we always say, make sure that there's a little bit of a contingency budget, even if it's short term, in order to make the space, usable for your needs.
Right.
Yeah. So let's see. We have a couple coming in here. How have you seen, besides from like the landlord point of view, but how have you seen like short-term retail evolve over the past few years? And are there like opportunities you think that are coming from this growing trend?
Well, what I think it's done is it's created a lot more, it really has helped retail in general. Because I do think, previously, if somebody wanted to sort of test the waters with a concept, they'd have to sign a 5 or 10 year lease without really sort of having their act together. So, it's funny because we see now, all the reports about how retail has been dying and there's been all sorts of problems. It's actually the opposite. There's so many new, exciting types of retailers out there, and there's so many new, exciting pop-ups and things happening that it's so much different than it was walking into a sort of boring Toys R Us or a Payless Shoes or something like that. So I think the pop-ups have played a huge part in just letting folks, dip their toe in the water and try a retail store.
I think that test kind of goes two-sided, right? Because from a landlord side, whether you're a mall operator, you have an inline space in Fifth Avenue, you want to position people in a long-term lease that are going to be positioned for success. So It's a test on both sides a little bit. You get to see how they perform.
Absolutely.
To see if you want to lock them in long-term, right?
Absolutely. Yes, for sure.
So, and some of the challenges we're seeing in retail or the evolution that's happening, how have you seen any technologies out there that you think that have been exciting to maybe, be top of mind for brands as they think through space? It could be on the experiential side or on the data collection side.
I think that tech, what's happening now with technology is amazing. For so long, I think retailers had to just rely on sort of, taking people's phone numbers at the cash register or their gut feeling as to who was walking around past the store. Now there is so much data out there that a retailer can truly make intelligent decisions as to where they belong, why they belong there, who lives in the neighborhood, what's the education level, what are they spending on, hard goods in this neighborhood. And, the amount of information is incredible. And it works on the property side also. Owners are able to sort of look at real hard data and figure out, there's a lack of, whether it's a grocery store or a lack of fitness or, there's a lot of money being spent on groceries, but it's being spent out of the market. So, maybe that can help us find a retailer. So the data, the advances in data is mind-blowing over the past, decade in terms of what's available. And, it helps us with our clients tremendously because everyone is now really able to make a much more intelligent decision.
So this might seem like a broad question. Maybe you answer it in putting buckets of neighborhoods. But to that note of data, like what industries right now are you seeing a lot of growth in that you're excited about from your point of view, where you think that there's, in the coming months or years, you see them growing their footprint in brick and mortar?
So it's a great question. I mean, health and wellness is going through the roof. Besides the concierge medical services and the urgent care, there's, meditation and the just, basically health and wellness centers. So we're seeing a lot of that, and that's sort of fitness related as well.
Yeah.
Fitness is with all the boutique fitness, whether it's boxing or boot camp or spinning. I mean, there's just an incredible sort of influx of new challenging workouts. So that's amazing. I think cosmetics has done an incredible job. There's a lot of both makeup and perfumes and mass retailers doing sort of well. Sephora does an amazing job. Ulta's doing an amazing job. And quick service food. I mean, food has come such a long way over the past few years. There are really good options that are done quick now. It's not just fast food. And so it's, over the past few years, we've seen a tremendous rise in that.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think that we're seeing similar trends on our side, and it's interesting to see what food and and a lot of the more traditional CPG brands are looking to do in physical space.
Right.
To kind of connect closer with their followers and develop deeper relationships. That you can only go so far online with that. And then if you can create, and certain industries like cosmetics, they have these amazing Instagram followers, and we've opened stores like when we did the Too Faced store, the cult following that these beauty influencers have are so sticky. They will just go, and the sneaker industry is the same way. That
whole sneaker industry, the fashion sneaker industry, is mind blowing as to even the secondhand side of it is it's incredible. I mean, sneakers are one of the hottest sort of items out there. Forgetting sort of the Nikes and the Adidas, but we're talking about sort of the fashion variations of it, and whether it's a Kith or a Flight Club. I mean, those stores are incredible, and the energy in them are fascinating.
Is there? So I actually had a couple questions come in. I'm going to try to. So we got one. Says since retailing could use their data to predict, understand, and solidify their business, is that a natural evolution for entrepreneurs to be able to actually deal and comprehend more technically there? And then I think it got cut off, but I think I'm going to try to chime in there. And look, I think that one of the gaps has been, especially with digital native companies, is you get all that information on the back end of your website, right? You know who comes to your site, where they're coming from, what pages they're going to, and there's been a disconnect of that collection of data to what happens in physical. Mm-hmm. But to your point, is you're starting to see that more and more, right?
Right.
What's happening on the block? How are people being driven there? What are my busy times of the day? And I do think that is a natural evolution to the question that was asked by I Know I Make You Smile. But it's still a job, right? Like whether it's on the real estate side or the brand side, it's not just putting in the technology to collect the data. It's having an approach to what you do with that data, and how do you think about what questions you want to answer,
right,
and then utilize that information to help you make more informed decisions.
Yeah, for sure. It is amazing that retailers for the past half century really had no data. They based it on such the most limited amount of sort of information. A lot of it was just gut. A lot of retailers sort of prided themselves on the gut. It feels good. There's a good area. I see my customers here.
Yeah. Okay. So Josh came back in and he asked, when you are pitching for short term, I guess in comparison to like a long-term lease, do you expect like a full presentation? What kinds of materials should a brand have handy, I guess, in order to get that sign off, being that it's a little bit different than a long-term lease?
It's a great question. I mean, I think you want to, for a pop-up, I think an owner wants to see something that's exciting, something that will definitely bring eyes to the space and maybe even some press. So, any presentation that one can do without spending too much money. Clearly you still have to get an owner to sort of say yes. And while most of them now, it's not a new concept anymore. Years ago, you really had to explain to an owner what someone wanted to do. But now everybody, for the most part, understands what's involved. But still, you don't want a Christmas tree store or
right,
something like that.
Yeah, you want to show that you're going to drive excitement and have new. foot traffic there. And what would you say? And I know we talked industry-wise, but you're still on the pulse of things. Like off the top of your head, are there one or two recent examples of stores or retailers that you think are really doing things right? And hello, Pop-Up Penny. Thanks for joining us. We just saw your hello message.
I think we mentioned Kith before. We mentioned Sephora. I love what Equinox, to me, has been an incredible, they've been around a fairly long time, and they seem to never go out of sort of hipness.
Right.
They keep figuring out how to sort of keep their customers. So I love what they do. I love, that they're always sort of investing in new brands and getting the clubs back, fixing them up regularly, and so they to me are a great example of somebody that just is sort of on the pulse. I think Urban Outfitters, which is Anthropology and Free People, they seem to always sort of manage to stay relevant, and so they're slow and steady, but I love what they do as well.
Yeah, and they're an example, too, I think, of another element that a lot of stores are doing to be experiential is the pop-in shop and carving out space for other brands to bring in experiences.
They're doing pizza in one of their stores. They have eyeglasses. It's just, So,
that's another. I mean, food is always a big conversation. I see Stephanie Ann said Glossier. Yes, that was a great pop-up, and now opened in LA and doing more stores. But food, we need to talk about two things before we go. Food is one of them, not because it's lunchtime, but that's a big element of the co-retailing that's happening. Yeah. And you're seeing the food court really reimagined, right? I mean, look what they did at Grand Central, and then you've seen like that pop-up model too, where it's like celebrity chef contests, and we recently saw a model where they did these pop-up restaurants with chefs to see who was most popular, and then somebody got a longer-term lease out of it.
Right. Yeah, no, food has been completely reinvented. The food courts that we grew up with, were a Pizza Hut and a Kentucky Fried Chicken, and that was it basically. And now it's all gourmet. It really is. The food options for all of us has gotten so much better. Clearly there'll be some sort of shakeout. There's a lot of them out there. And we always look to sort of go with the best group that we can, that has sort of the most skin in the game, and just has their finger on the pulse of what the market needs.
So speaking of finger on the pulse, we can't wrap up without talking a little bit about the biggest real estate professional convention that happens every year, ICSC.
Yep.
So what would you say were the top 2 or 3 main takeaways that you took from this year's conference, that is top of conversation?
This year was, it was very positive. And I think going into, say, last year's, the media was still all over sort of the death of retail and bricks and mortar is, so I think everyone sort of had a little bit of a down face last year. People were, not sure if that was happening or not, but, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy if you hear it enough. I think this year going into the conference that the media has been easier on retail. I think they've realized that it's not dying, it's just changing, and change is okay. It happens all the time. So people were definitely upbeat. We met a lot of retailers that, I had sort of heard of before, but didn't experience, and they're looking to come into this market. And so I think for national and international retailers, they perceive that New York City may have a down moment. So it's a good time for them to come in. Which is always good. It's it always creates opportunity for others when they believe that there's maybe blood in the water.
Okay, all right, yeah, and there's definitely shifts. Different neighborhoods within New York, in Manhattan itself, kind of gentrifying, and a lot of conversation about what's going to happen. There's pockets of Soho that are getting reinvigorated.
Yeah. Meatpacking district is as hot as it's ever been. I mean, it's got such a terrific sort of combination of luxury and contemporary and tourists. You know, the Starbucks roastery is going to open soon. That's going to be an incredible.
Did you say Starbucks grocery?
The roastery.
Oh, roastery. I was like, Starbucks is going into grocery. I missed that headline. But yes, the roastery.
Maybe someday. But you know, that's just going to be an incredible sort of boom for meatpacking on top of what's already happening. So, like you said, all the markets of New York are all sort of, they really are finding their way and figuring it out, and it's exciting times in our business right now. It really is.
Yeah, we're definitely getting a lot of interesting calls come our way.
Sure.
People rethinking space. So, so I guess before you go, because you always like to have a little bit of fun, and we know that you're in the know when it comes in general to New York City. What is the must-eat-at restaurant this summer?
The must-eat-at restaurant this summer, I heard, is what's it called? Vinyl on by Hudson Yards. I think I might be botching the name, but I am, and I will get. But yeah, I've heard great things about it, and yeah.
Okay, so Hudson Yards, I'm definitely like looking forward to their culinary experience. I think that, you know, I think the one thing that you're seeing a lot more of is developers and landowners rethinking how they curate space with that mix of office and food and retail and hoteling and creating like these mini cities. And with Hudson Yards, it seems to be that their curation within food,
right,
it's going to be a big selling point.
And I'm probably not a good example anymore because I have a 1-month-old and almost a 3-year-old, as you know. So Chuck E. Cheese, I would have said, is probably the hottest restaurant that I've been to in the past.
Chuck E. Cheese. Well, I don't know if Hudson Yards is opening one of those, but you never
know.
I
don't think so.
Well, this was great. We had people from all over. Kitty, hello from Minneapolis. Thanks for joining in. And we had somebody from Montreal join us. And Josh giving a shout out. Just hire the Lioness Group if you want help with a pop-up. So we appreciate that. But this has been great. I think that there's been a lot of great information. We are going to have this live live for the next 24 hours on our Insta story. So, you know, if you want to tune back in and see some more answers, and then we'll do a little like best of highlights on our like recap as well. So awesome. Thank you for joining us, everybody, and we will see you soon on our next Tuesday Talks.
Thanks, Melissa. Great job.
Thank you.
Bye.